Welcome to Small Town Sound, the podcast where we celebrate big-time music education happening in small towns. I'm your host, Steve Brown, and today's episode is a special one. We are talking to a true veteran of the profession, someone who dedicated 30 years to building a thriving music program at Wesclin Jr and Senior High School in Trenton, Illinois. He's a retired band director, a respected leader in the Illinois Music Educators Association, and someone whose students performed at the state level and traveled far beyond their small town roots. On top of that, he built a highly successful marching band program that became a source of pride for his entire community. I'm honored to welcome Rodney Washburn to the show. Thank you, Rodney, for being here.
Hey, Steve. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, this is going to be great. Can you take us back to the beginning of your, why you wanted to be a music educator and maybe some influences and what brought you to Wesclin?
Sure. Well, started beginner band back in, I believe it was fourth grade. At the end of my fourth grade year, had the most outstanding beginner band director. Joe MacArthur was just the most gentle, reassuring, positive person to start with. And then after him, I decided I was going to quit band because I was scared of the giant that was the junior high band director. And keep in mind, I just said I was a fourth grader going into fifth grade. So by the time I got to seventh grade, the man was a giant. I was a punk seventh grader who saw this 6'2" guy with a full beard as a giant, and he was scary to me. So I decided I was going to quit band. I happened to mention it to my sister, who mentioned it to my parents, and they changed my mind. And so I continued on with band, and actually it's a good thing that I did because Richard Eisenagel was my junior high band director in Central Illinois, and he is the reason that I became a band director. I knew during my seventh grade year what I was going to do with my life. Certainly by eighth grade. He was just an incredible human being. And then had incredible experiences after that as well, throughout high school and college. Band directors, private lesson teachers, everyone was just so reassuring and very positive. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. Got into my current position at Wesclin by playing in a brass quintet. Trumpet player was the current director at Wesclin, and he said, hey, I'm going to move on. There's going to be an open job there. And Wesclin is on one side of Clinton County in southern Illinois, and I happened to have a friend who was the band director on the other side of Clinton County, and so I talked to him, and he said, yeah, I think it could be a good program. So applied, and that's how I ended up at Wesclin.
So what when you got the job at Wesclin, what did the program look like? What did they specialize in? Was it a normal program? Things like that.
Yeah, it was an interesting program. And it was a small school, so you wouldn't expect a huge program, but it was even small for a small school. Somewhere in the low 20s, mid 20s, I think, for a school of about 400. We averaged between 375 and 400 at Wesclin most of my years there. So it was a little bit smaller, but I think the big deal was that there wasn't a ton of respect for the program in the community, within the school, because there had been numerous directors before me. A trumpet player that I just talked about had been at the school 3 years prior to me. Before that, I never got the exact rundown, but it was something like 7 band directors in the previous 6 years. So it was just a very changing position. And so there just wasn't a lot of respect for the band, for music in general. But it really got the feeling, talking to people, doing the interview, that they wanted something more in that program. So felt lucky to be offered the job.
Now, did you always teach? So you and I have known each other for quite a while. Did you always teach beginning band all the way up through high school?
Yeah, actually, It was very interesting when I applied for the band job, which was going to be a 5 through 12 band job, so beginner band, junior high band, and high school band. But apparently the board meeting where that hire was going to take place was attended by numerous parents in the community who demanded they take a look at the music program and do something to make it better. And so they agreed at that meeting to hire not one person, but two people. So I got the call, got a call from my new principal, made me nervous. He said, I need you to call back. Keeping in mind this was before text messages and emails and those sorts of things. So I gave him a call back, and he said, well, got some good news for you and some interesting news. And he said, you were hired, not a problem, but they wanted to hire another person, add choir back in to the department, which had been gone for several years. And so need to know what you want to teach and what you would want someone else to teach. And I kind of felt like the best way for me to build a program is to do the junior high band, which was 7th and 8th grade at the time, and the high school program. And then hired someone else to do the choir part of it, and beginner band, they started in 5th grade, and then there was a 6th grade band also, so a second year group. So I taught junior high and high school band most of the time. There was a period in there where when I first was hired, I went to the elementaries to do some sectionals, just so that those students would get to know me as well. But then years pass, people move on, things change. I actually did the beginner and 6th grade band rehearsals while someone else taught the lessons, and that didn't work out very well. So lots of changes over the years there, but primarily, and my job in the end when I retired was middle school band, which had turned into grades 6, 7, and 8, and the high school band.
Yeah. So where we're from in Southern Illinois, there's a band director and a choir director. The choir director goes from the grade school all the way through the high school, and the band director does the same thing, but for instrumental. And then there's the other type of director who teaches both band and choir. I'm from one of those schools that are doing both band and choir. Do you think one's more common than the other in our area? I'm always interested in that. Like what made my program or the people that built my program different from the people that built yours?
Yeah, I think that your setup is maybe more unique than what I see around our area a lot. Mostly it's a lot of band people doing band stuff and choir people doing choir stuff, and then general music, unfortunately, thrown in there by whoever is available. That's very unfortunate, of course, but that's kind of the way it is. I think you have a very interesting setup, and it's unique for you as an individual where you're capable of doing both choir and band. My first job, I had a job in another small community for 3 years before I started at Wesclin, and there I was the band director and the choir director. But it was clear that band was going to be a better path for me. Even my superintendent in some of the evaluations said, I wish you would put as much energy into the choir program as you put into the band program. And that just wasn't for me. I enjoyed the time in choir, sang in church choir for a number of years, directed church choirs for a number of years, but just trying to teach that medium didn't work out as well for me.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's get to your students. So which is always my favorite thing to hear about. In most of so I've interviewed 3 different directors so far, and a lot of the directors that I've been talking to have said that there's a core group that kind of drives their program. So I guess my question is, what did student leadership look like for your program?
Yeah, I think I did have appointed, elected leaders, a band council, if you will. But at the same time, it was kind of an organic way of creating leadership. Students would excel musically. and others would look to them for guidance. Other students would look to those for guidance, whether it was, hey, can we get together and figure out how this goes? Or those leaders in a section creating a sectional practice or something like that. I really think that, again, it was a little more organic than just appointing a drum major and them taking charge of everything.
So let's talk about some highlights of your program. You taught for 32 years at
33
Wesclin?
years total, 30 at Wesclin.
Yeah. So talk about some successes you had there and maybe some highlights that you had, and I'm sure there were many.
Yeah, I mean, it was a wonderful career, one that I'm pretty proud of when I look back on it, not because of me, but because of what I was able to provide to the community, the school community, and the students that were there. We had a great time. It seemed like philosophies aligned with one another at just the right time to keep pushing forward. I guess it was my second year, had a student come up and say, we'd like to do jazz band. We heard there used to be a jazz band, and there was a jazz band at Wesclin many, many years before I arrived, but it had been dropped in that cycle of teachers that went through. And so said, we'd like to start a jazz band. And so I talked to a bunch of the students who said they were interested, and I said, I'm willing to do this. It's not going to be during the school day. It's going to have to be before school or after school, and we're going to have to commit to it. And as long as you're willing to do that, I'm willing to make it happen. So we started a jazz band. So anytime they were interested in doing something, I would try to promote that. And from then on, it was just about providing opportunities for the students. Whether it was an honor band event, a regional honor band. I know we were involved in a lot of those together with the two schools. Some university honor bands in the area, letting those individuals excel. Sometimes it was creating other small ensembles. We had for several years a very successful saxophone quartet that started gigging out and about in the community. We did a percussion ensemble for a couple of years. Wasn't a normal thing. Me not being a percussionist didn't necessarily feel overly confident leading that, but I had a percussion instructor who was a student at McKendree University, which is right next door to us here at Wesclin, who came in and said, I'd like to do a little extra. Is that okay with you? I said, yeah, you don't get paid anymore, but you can certainly have students if they're interested in doing so. So they did a percussion ensemble. Certainly lots of ensembles for solo and ensemble contests that would start. And then I'd say, you know what, this doesn't have to be a one and done thing. You can keep playing. And sometimes they would keep playing after that wintertime event. And I think that was great for them.
Yeah. So I know you also directed pit orchestras for your musicals. The thing that I find incredible is all of us directors who work in a small school, we have to do so many different things. You've mentioned probably 10 different ensembles already, plus, doing musicals, plus doing marching band that we'll talk about later. How did you find, how do you find balance with all of that?
I'm not sure you do.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I would often take those obligatory pictures of those days when we had jazz band rehearsal at 7 a.m. So I would take a picture of my car in the parking lot when it was dark outside, and then I'd do the full day of school, the after school set building, whatever needed to be done there, or messing with lights and sound, and then the evening musical practice, and go out and take another picture of the car in the parking lot, being the only one, but in the same parking place it was in, 13, 14 hours ago. And I thought that was kind of funny, not necessarily something to be proud of, but that's kind of what it took to get things accomplished. And it's hard to balance all of that for sure. Having support around you, having other coworkers that help out, having students that were willing to assist with those things, certainly made a big difference.
One of the coolest things in my career is I got to teach my kids, my son and daughter, and I know you got to teach both of your girls in your program. Can you talk a little bit about how special that was and how you handled being a dad and Mr. Washburn at the same time?
Yeah, well, it was actually Mr. Dad.
Mr. Dad, yeah. They called me. My kids call me Brown, and for some reason, my son called me Brown the first day he stepped in as a freshman. I was like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Well, that's what everybody else calls you."
That's great. That's great. Yeah, actually, I just had to send an email to my daughter, who teaches at Wesclin now in the music department, and the high school band director. And so after at the end of the email, I signed it Rodney/Mr. Dad. Just kind of a fun thing. You know what? Best experience of my life was being able to teach my students. A little apprehensive at first, but it was a lot of fun. The only time they took advantage of the situation was when they would need, some extra lunch money, or they had to turn in some money for a field trip or get something signed. Then it was convenient to have Dad there. Other than that, really tried to treat them just like any other student who was in the ensemble. I had high expectations for everyone, my daughters included. They were twins, so went through the program at the same time. But yeah, those high expectations were there for all. But could not have had a better time than having them in the ensemble with me.
Did you ever have so one of the conversations I had with my daughter was, you are a student in my band and choir, and you're expected to, you're expected to perform just like everybody else is, and if you're not practicing, I know that you're not practicing. So don't try to fool me, don't try to lie to me, don't try to do anything like that. So did you ever have anything like that with your daughters?
You know what? Not really. They were great students, not because they were forced to be. Their mom and I are both teachers, so they kind of knew that they couldn't get away with a lot of things, a lot of those little lies that you might say to another parent. So they just didn't try, really. I know that there was an experience in 7th grade, I think. One of my two was on the softball team. Loved softball, city ball back in grade school, and thought, you know what, I want to play softball in junior high. Okay, great, go for it. And so played 7th grade, didn't really have a great time with it, and so had decided that she wanted to quit. My other daughter was a dancer and loved being on the dance team, and so that was going to continue forever. But the softball player decided she didn't want to continue anymore after the first year. And I said, you know what else are you going to do? And she said, Dad, is there anything wrong with just focusing on band and being a good French horn player? And I said, yeah, I guess there's nothing wrong with that at all. So that's how that continued. And she was an outstanding player. Both of my daughters were great players, not because they were forced to be, but they just, again, wanted to excel and make themselves feel good. Not so much make mom and dad happy.
Sure. Let's talk a little bit about marching band. One of the first things I saw your program, not just talking to you, but actually your kids performing, was your marching band. And I always had a lot of respect for your program. I always hated when our band was going to go up against your band, because I knew we were going to have to perform really well to get a trophy or whatever. But I'm kidding a little bit, because my kids liked watching your band too. So it was just always a unique program. It was it was always a fun show. Can you talk a little bit about what you did to build that and how it evolved over the years?
Well, it was kind of interesting when I first started at Wesclin. There was no football team, but they had started marching a couple of years before, and that director had taken them to one or two small contests. And so I went in just thinking we're going to keep the marching going. The philosophy there is, no, we don't have to march, but if students graduate out of this program and go to college, the first thing that most of them are going to experience is marching band. So I at least want them to know which foot is left and which foot is right. But then beyond that, anything that I felt was important, I thought was important enough to do well, and to do the best job we could with it. And so I think that was the philosophy that I followed throughout, with the marching program, especially concert groups, jazz, pep, all of that for sure. But it just would never allow the focus to be on winning. And that's really difficult in a school where the mentality is you either get first or you lost. Those basketball and volleyball and football scoreboards show a clear winner at the end. And if you didn't win, you lost. Music is not like that. And so that's what I really wanted to preach to them was we're going to do the best job we can. Some days in the marching competition area, there will be a set of judges that think that you performed well enough to earn a certain score that put you above everyone else. Doesn't mean that you won. It means that they liked what they saw that day. And if it was a different set of judges or the same set of judges another day, it would come out differently. So we were just out there trying to perform the best we could every single time we went out there. Again, high expectations. If we're going to perform, we're going to perform well. If I teach you how to do a roll step, I expect you to do a roll step. And it was just those sorts of expectations. If I say that there's supposed to be a crescendo here, or we have decided musically there should be a crescendo here, then everyone needs to do that crescendo. In my mind, we didn't stand out. I know you said that you think that we did. I think that we were successful, not because of trophies that we won, but because there were directors like you who looked at us and said, well, that's really good. I actually did have another director once, a college friend, who came up to me, someone that I would see every 2 or 3 years at a competition, and he just said, Rodney, how do you get your band to do whatever it was? I don't even remember. He said, how do you teach that? And I don't know how I taught that. I just know, again, that it was an expectation and everyone knew. A posture thing, a style of step thing, any of those sorts of things. And I think the other part of it was just being cognizant of what the current trends were, trying to stay on top of that. For the longest time, I said, we will never have electronics on the field. I used to hate when bands, back in the 90s, I guess, would have an electric bass out there on the field to boost the bass sound. So my philosophy was no electronics, which was great until you kind of had to have some electronics out there. And so we decided one year to go all in. Chose a show that had a Beethoven sonata to start the show. I think it started the show, or maybe one of the movements. So, of course, had to have a piano on the field, which means that you have to have the sound system on the field. And as long as we're doing that, we already have the vibraphone and the marimba on the field. So why don't we throw some mics down there? And so it became a whole thing. And if I would have held on to that original philosophy, it wouldn't have been nearly as fun for the students or the audiences to hear as we progressed on.
I have brothers who like music, but they didn't major in music. My older brother started majoring in classical guitar, but then got out of it. But he always tells me if you don't stay with the times, those kids are not going to be in your program. If you don't want to do computers, or if you don't want to do electronics, they're just not going to stay with you. And for a little while I fought it, but he was right. He's absolutely right. You gotta give, at some point you got to give the kids, what they want. So and sometimes that is putting electronics into your front ensemble. I copied you 2 times, and I don't know if you know that. But you told me the story of your piano in your marching band. I don't know where we were. I don't know if it was at a festival or what we were doing, but you talked about it. So that very next year, I did a show called Classic Queen, where we had a piano sonata playing. It opened the show, and then we went into some Queen music, and then it evolved into some more classical music, and it just kept going back and forth. So I copied you there. And then I remember a show you had, and I'm not sure what the show was, but it was you guys put your instruments down completely over on the side of the field, and then you had like this it was like a dance battle or something. It wasn't like a dance like a techno dance. It was like almost like a folk dance.
Yeah, that was from the Maury, like you'd see it at rugby matches and those sorts of things. Yeah.
I absolutely loved it.
I actually had a former student. I loved having former students back to be staff members for me for summer camp. They were never allowed to come back. The year they graduated, they had to have 1 year of college band under their belts. And they had to be in the band or music major or a member of the marching band or something. If they just wanted to come back and help out, no. Sorry, we don't want you to come back and hang out with all of your old friends. But this particular student went on to be a music major, had marched Spirit, and came back to be our visual person. And I really didn't have titles on a lot of people, but after seeing him perform, he was the visual person. He was a great dancer, great teacher for that sort of thing. So he taught all of the visual stuff that year, including coming up with that dance at that battle. And it wasn't a battle at all. It was a ceremonial type of performance. But he put that all together, and it was great. Yeah,
it was great. It was the first time I had seen choreography like that on the field, and I thought, absolutely, we're doing that next year. So I got a martial arts show the next year, and we had bow staffs and laying on the side of the field, and we took our instrument to those bow staffs, and then we did like some choreography with the bow staff. But that was copied from you.
Oh, well, you're welcome.
Thank you. Let's move on and talk a little bit about ILMEA and your travel experiences. So I know you took a band to perform at our state convention. Talk a little bit about that experience and performing at that level in January and how that was for you.
Yeah, I mean, it was an incredible experience for the group. I certainly loved it, but really made everything that I did good for the students, and I thought at the time it was good for them. It came near the end of my career, and I sat in that theater where most of the bands perform at IMEC, and would just watch them, often thinking, there's no way. A lot of times it's much larger groups, often from the Chicago suburbs that were performing there, and I would look at their programs and I would see inside their list of 8 or 10 or 12 private lesson teachers and the number of assistant directors they had and other staff members, and I initially thought, no way, I can't compete with that. And I was right, I couldn't compete with that, so stopped thinking that way and just started thinking, what are we capable of doing, and finally came up with a group that I thought would really benefit. They could do the performing, they could perform at that level, and I thought that it would be good for the program at that time. By that time, we had done a number of other things. We had traveled around performing at Disney and performing a couple of different places in New York and in Philadelphia, and thought that was kind of the next natural progression. And that's, it's pretty nerve-wracking performing for an audience of peers. It's not full of parents or grandparents out there saying, that was the best concert I've ever heard, every single time they came to a concert. But yeah, I felt like the band and the students were ready for it, and it was really going to be beneficial for the program. Yeah, and I think that's the key. Should you perform at your state clinic? And the answer is yes, absolutely, if it's going to benefit the students in the program. It wasn't about me being up there in front. My back was to the audience the whole time, so it didn't really matter to me that much. But I think that the students got a lot out of it. A lot of educating to the students, a little bit more so to the school and the community. What a big deal it was. And I think that's true in all programs, really small or large. But even more importantly, in a small program where you don't have lots of cheerleaders for you, sometimes you have to be your own cheerleader, and you have to create that energy and do that advertising. And in this case, it was educating everyone that it was a pretty big deal to be one of, 6 or 8 high school bands that were selected to perform at that conference.
And it was a really good concert. I mean, it was a great concert. I remember sitting there just smiling and, just kind of proud that a Southern Illinois school was up there.
Yeah, it was great. It was fun. A lot of fun.
So we've talked a little bit about challenges, that we face in a small school. Can you talk a little bit about that and some advice you would give to directors that are just starting out in a small school?
Yeah, it's interesting because it is a small school. Again, 400 students. I had typically in the 40s, 50s in the band. There was a period there where we were in the 70s, but we never focused on that kind of a number. It wasn't about building a program that way. It was about building opportunities and building attitude about the program. So I think that was always a focus. Personally, work-life balance is always a problem. And like you said, when we were discussing musicals, you kind of end up doing it all. You're there for the jazz band rehearsal before school. You're there for the pit rehearsal after school. Then you're sticking around to build or decorate or paint a set piece for a marching band show or musical production or whatever. Yeah, it's tough with that work-life balance. I'm someone who always needs to be busy. And so that worked out well for me. And then I also had a very supportive family. My wife was a musician and throughout school. She stopped playing after college, but was an outstanding trombone player, and so knew what she was getting into from the start. Having my daughters loved growing up around the program. They loved going to a rehearsal. I think that I'm sorry to say this to a percussionist, but I want to say that maybe my daughter was 3 months old when I changed her after an elementary concert, changed her diaper on a timpani. It was covered. It had a protective cover on it. Everything was fine. I know timpani aren't tables, but yeah, so they were just around music all the time. My wife would have to bring the girls up to musical practice because they just loved being there. And so they'd sit on the floor just watching practice. So by the time we got to the show performance, they knew all the words. They were singing along because they knew it sometimes better than the actors on stage did. So yeah, just it was great having a supportive family.
I was worried when my kids were young. I was worried that they were up at the school too much, that that was somehow developing them in a bad way or something. But then as they grew up, I realized that that's what they always talked about. They're like, oh yeah, remember that show, or you remember that marching band show, or you remember that jazz band. That's what they loved. So
Right.
I stopped worrying about that so much after they got a little bit older.
Yeah, I think it's important also to think that you don't want to think small or big in a program. We all have equal issues to deal with. We're all requesting buses. A large school may have to get 3, 4, 5, 6 buses. Where a small school gets 1 or 2 buses. I started doing the sound stuff for marching band. I had to buy mixers and speakers and microphones and those sorts of things. Just like a large school has to buy mixers and speakers and microphones. Maybe a couple more microphones, but it's the same things. Really, not thinking that it's big or small, but just thinking it's music education. What can I do to help this program? What can I do to help these students be better students, be better people, and enjoy music?
So you had a 30-plus year career. Is there a moment or is there a certain thing that you look at and say, that's what I'm proud of? That's my legacy. That's what I want people to know me for. And that's what I want my students to remember.
Yeah, I think the best one is that the program continues to thrive. That it wasn't about me. It was never about me. I never felt that it was about me as the director or an individual. Gosh, I didn't even like putting my name on a concert program. In fact, I usually didn't. My name didn't appear on the program. I wanted all the students' names in there, but I didn't include my name because it was about them, not about me. So I'm happy to see the program continuing. I retired in 2020, right as COVID was hitting. I had all of those final concerts lined up, had the programming, and had the tunes that I wanted to do, was excited to do that, and then it all came to a close. So the next couple of years, like in every program, was a challenge. The bigger one at my school, because there was a new director there. Fortunately, the director who came in had student taught with me a couple of years prior to that, so he knew a lot of the students, and that really helped with the transition. But that was 6 years ago. He was there 5 years. There's a new person this year who is continuing to do wonderful things, helping to move the program forward. And so I think that's the most important thing, is the program is surviving in spite of me. There were certainly things along the way. The ILMEA performance was simply amazing. It was very humbling to stand on that stage and hear the applause behind me from an audience of peers. We hosted the Dallas Brass one year, brass quintet plus percussionist. They do a lot of school concerts. We were lucky enough to get them to come in one year. We had a sellout crowd in our made-up stage in the gymnasium. And at the end of all of their performances, if you've not seen them perform, they always have the local band come up on stage and perform with them. And so we were at the end of the night. They had performed a great concert. The crowd was amazing. And I had to go back and turn on the gym lights. It had to be timed correctly because you know how gym lights take a while to warm up. Or back in the day, they took a certain amount of time to warm up, so I had to turn them on at just the right time. And when I was standing in the back of the room at the breaker board to turn on each circuit to get the lights to come on, just this wash came over me of, this is incredible. This is the experience that I want my students to have. Looking around, seeing everyone excited, Seeing them up front performing with a group of professional musicians, that was one of my proudest moments, actually. But yeah, just so many along the way. It was never winning a competition. It was performing well at a marching competition, or doing a concert band performance somewhere that was recognized by others as being a good one. But yeah, there were those things along the way that you feel proud of.
Yeah, I'm sure. I want you to know that you are one of my biggest mentors in my career, and I know that there's probably 20 to 50 other Southern Illinois band directors that could say the same thing. So I know your career was awesome, and I know you've done some great things with kids, and I appreciate that. And thank you for everything that you've done for music education around here and beyond.
Yeah, I couldn't have asked for a better career. Deciding as a seventh grader what I was going to do with my life, that often doesn't work out. But it did for me, and I was able to follow that dream. And throughout, I just wanted to be sure that the students that I had were learning to be good people, and then maybe a little something about music, and able to create some music at the same time, and to know that music lasts a lifetime. Conduct a community band now, and there are players in that are high school students, very accomplished high school students, up to folks that are considerably older than I am even, and they just love to play. And that's the thing with music, that it can stick with you forever.
Yeah. Well, this has been incredible, and we could probably do another 45 minutes, but they say that podcasts shouldn't last over 30. Well, I always go over 30, so I don't know what that means.
Close enough.
Might not be. Yeah, close enough. But I thank you very much for coming on. This has been awesome.
Thanks, Steve. It's been great, and I really appreciate what you're doing to help out small schools in the band programs.
Absolutely. And thank you for everybody listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe and share it with other music educators who are making a difference. Remember that no matter how big your school is, that has no correlation to the impact you can make on the lives of your kids. This has been Small Town Sound. Thank you for listening.